Excited to have you. So far, I'll let you know we're ready to roll. But and we're up and running. So since the very beginning, when I started this journey of bringing people on that I find fascinating, um, I met this person that's coming up, um, and she's a critical thinker in her field. She's somebody that when we chat, I always walk away either a feeling better about myself or like I
Mm.
learned something. So what you want to do is you kind of constantly want to be either around them or picking their brain. All right, they have a lot to offer the world. So she is Dr. Christina Raphael. She is a mental health specialist. I'm bringing her on because in the past I've had a lot of people reach out to me confusing what I do with the world of mental health. And I am very clear about what my lane is. I'm very specific about what I do. I don't outkick my coverage. So when you come to me about something that I know I can't handle, I like to have people around me that I know who can. So I created a great referral program with Dr. Raphael, who anybody who comes to me with anything I feel like is out of my scope, I will continuously pass on to her. But before we go into any more detail, I want to say welcome and thank you, Dr. Raphael. This is Dropping Dimes, 5 questions with Dropping Dimes, and Dr. Raphael. How you doing today? How you feeling?
I'm fine. I'm doing good. I think I am going through this life journey, and I'm taking things in, and I'm just so happy to be here. It was, with COVID and everything going on, it was difficult, but like you said, I feel like there's some things that we need to talk about and get some clarity on. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. Um, you see, I touched on it before. It's one of those things where because I do relationship coaching, but within that coaching, I know what my lady is, and I'll often get sent messages that go off, and I'm like, that's not my area of expertise. I don't dare, and I know exactly what line not to cross. So when I run across someone like you who has the education, who has the experience, I want to bring you on so that people can understand number one what the difference is. Number
Mhm.
two, um, who needs it, what they need. But we're going to go a little further into that with the 5 questions.
Mhm.
Can we start off by having your credentials, just so people know that you're who you are?
Legit. Okay, yeah, for sure. Okay, so I just recently graduated from Nova Southeastern in their Doctors of Marriage and Family Therapy program. So now I am doctorate's level clinician. I have a master's in social work from FIU as well as the bachelor's. I'm licensed to the state as a licensed practitioner, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also I've went through extensive training in sexual health and sexual trauma. So on top of that, I have a specialty to work with people who suffered sexual traumas or have sexual intimacy issues, specifically with couples and with individuals. I do some financial planning as well. I'm not a financial planner. I am not a CPA by any means. However, from my experience, I understand what money means for us in the United States and how it can dictate not only our lifestyles but our well-being. So I've worked in those realms as well. Currently, I work as a renal social worker. I train interns from Florida State in that field. I also teach psychology for a nursing program, and I do assessments, and I have a private practice. It's Totality Wellness. It's a wellness center where we do mental health, we do massages and healing, we do Reiki, we do nutrition, everything wellness.
I will be dropping the link down below for anybody interested in reaching out. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is not your average person I'm talking to. It's somebody with the background, the education, the know-how, the knowledge, and I'm really excited to bring her in because, like I said, this is 5 questions, and we're gonna start right here. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, in your opinion, okay, in your opinion, what's the best way to approach a friend or family member you feel can use therapy?
Mm. It's a tough question. Well, it's a tough situation per se because, the idea, and depending on the culture, not every culture embraces mental health and therapy. Um, and I think that taking that into consideration, taking the person as a whole into consideration, right? So, from my perspective, the best way to do that is to consider their culture, is to consider what situation they're going through and be sensitive to that and that approach. And then let them know that you're coming from a place where you care about them and you want the best for them, right? If you have the understanding of mental health or therapy, just giving a little background behind that, maybe breaking those stereotypes for that person, maybe letting them know that you yourself have been involved in therapy, or that someone that could give them some information. Just not only introducing it, but showing that it's a support that you're providing. So it's coming from a place where it's empathy, it's love. You care about this person and you want the best for them. I think a lot of people feel judged in times where people are saying, "Well, girl, you need therapy." And so we want to de-escalate that and let them know that you're not here to judge them, but you're here to help if that's something that you could do.
I love it because you use the word judged. And I feel like a lot of people, when they bring up therapy or somebody brings it up as an option, that's what the people feel like. Are you
Right.
calling me crazy? Are you
Mhm.
judging me? Are you passing? And it leads us into the next question.
Mhm.
Question number two. What are some of the myths you would like to dispel about seeking treatment?
Yeah, I get a lot of people that say, like, for instance, they'll say, "Well, I'm not crazy. I don't need therapy." I'm like, therapy is not for crazy people. Therapy is for everyday people. When you live, you work, you're in a relationship, you live on this planet, that comes with stress, that comes with anxiety, that may come with depression, it may come with grief. It comes with all these human experiences that we have to go through because we are not going to have a life that's pleasurable all the time. So when you consider those things, mental health or therapy per se could help you process those things that you're experiencing, whether if it's grief or anxiety, it's going to help you get those things out. So we know that when someone doesn't process, if someone doesn't release um, the stress or whatnot within their life, it builds up and then it comes to a place where it could explode, right? So I guess the myth that I would like to disqualify is that therapy is not for people who are crazy. Therapy is for everyday people like you and I, everybody. Okay. So, and then the premise behind that is that we naturally are going to run into stress. We naturally are going to run into anxiety. Some people have more anxiety than others. Some people have more stress than others. That's understandable. But I think the people that pay attention to those things and are able to process this with a licensed provider or mental health provider, they experience better lives overall, understanding, empathy, awareness, to what they're going through.
Empathy, awareness, fantastic. What do you call it? Yeah, I mean, I find the myths to be even more prevalent
Oh,
in certain demographics, certain cultures.
mm-hmm.
Like the less economically stable you are, for some reason, the more the myths occur.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because in your mind you're like, I can't eat, I can't really concentrate on mental health. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a luxury, and I think that's one of the things we need to really dispel. Where your mental health is not a luxury; it's a
Right.
necessity.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
it brings me back to the whole idea of finance, right? So if you show me your bank account, show me what you spend your money on, and I'll tell you what kind of person you are, right? So the ideas of luxury, some people might spend hundreds of dollars on food, right? Eating the most natural, healthy, organic food. And some people might say, why are you doing that? I'm gonna go to Walmart and get some cheap stuff, right? So it's what you place value on. If you're not placing value on your mental health, then yeah, I mean, I guess for you, it's not worth it. But I do think I'm one of those people that place a lot of value on my mental health because I know that if I'm not here, then I can't be here, So yeah.
I'm not here. I can't be here. That's a good. I
Yeah,
like
you
that.
say
I'm not here. I can't be here. And especially if you're a parent, if you
oh
have
yeah.
children relying on you, the best version of you is the
Mhm.
best parent you can
Right.
possibly be. They say I always hear when a plane is crashing and the
Mhm.
oxygen drops, that parents should put the oxygen on themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're no good, you're no good to your. You pass out. You're no
Yeah.
good to your kids. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that's one of those things where you could. Therapy is one of those things where
Oh yeah.
that's the oxygen. A lot of
Yeah.
times, that's the oxygen you might need to be
It
the
is.
best version of you.
Right.
Oh,
I agree. 100.
which leads us on again. I like the way we're
Mhm.
flowing. Okay, so why do you feel communities of color, especially communities of color, would benefit from therapy? Is there something in particular you see in these communities that make you feel that way?
Yeah, definitely. Any community, and I say any community, not just African American Black communities, but any marginalized community that suffered extent of trauma, right? Because we're understanding now that trauma is definitely something that is passed down. So we can't say specifically it's passed down hereditarily because we don't have that information, I guess. But the way that we think, right? So, say for instance, a parent is deathly afraid of dogs, right? Deathly afraid of dogs, and their child has never met a dog, has, may have no reason to fear dogs besides the fact that they don't know anything about it. And then now this child is deathly afraid of dogs and doesn't even know why, never had that experience with dogs, never played with dogs. And it's just something that that person really didn't understand. They just know that it's a fear that they have. And that's one really small example of trauma that could be passed down, right? A parent gotten bit by a dog. Now they don't do dogs anymore. And their kid doesn't do dogs and doesn't even understand why. But we're understanding that trauma is passed down, so fear is passed down, right? And we see that a lot in Black communities. If you were raised in a place to fear the police, then you're definitely going to teach your kids to fear the police. Not to say that in this world we don't have reasons to say that. But that's just an example. We pass down those traits, those ideas of fears, those perspectives of how people act or how you're treated, right? Am I the victim or am I the perpetrator, right? There's a lot of victim mentality that's passed down. So, on top of the biology, there's learned behaviors. And I think that in communities that have extreme amounts of trauma, like our Black community, we unknowingly, sometimes unconsciously, pass down those traits to our children. And I think the best thing to do with that is to process it, is to talk about it, is to get some of those fears and those anxieties out. And so for so long, we have been, the whole idea behind the Black community saying, we go to church, we don't really talk to people, is because we have been taught, we have been ingrained to keep it here, not to express, not to be too loud, not to, to be here and not to be, what's that word that we say? Be something but not be seen, right? Or something.
I heard, right.
Yeah, right. So I think that any community that has been marginalized, that experience trauma, would definitely 100% benefit from mental health. And I was talking to a friend too, because I'm seeing in my practice here at Totality Wellness, I am getting so many millennial couples, so many minority couples that have traditionally, even Hispanic, all types of Caribbean cultures, right? They're like, we didn't do this, my parents didn't talk about this, we don't even know how to talk about this, we're trying, you know so I do think there's been a shift, but I think that who would benefit the most are the people that never had the opportunity to express themselves.
I think that I think you said a lot in that last question. I mean, I've seen it firsthand, having worked with adolescents and
Mm-hmm.
youth for the majority of my career. I saw how the trauma, like you meet a kid and you're like, wow, he's a little rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
And then you meet mom and dad, and you're like, oh, I see exactly where he came from and exactly where some of the habits are
Right.
and exactly where some of like you would call it, trauma comes from. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane. Um, you also said something that marginalized any marginalized group. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of times overlooked is, there's poor white in part of the
Oh
country. There's yeah,
yeah.
there's immigrant. There's uh,
Mm-hmm.
women LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
There's you name it. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
definitely does it does everyone well. I mean, I saw this comedian one time. He did a bit where he talked about how men will grab all their emotions,
Mm-hmm.
all everything they go through on a daily basis, shove it down their throat, and just
Mm-hmm.
keep it down their throat till they till the day they retire,
Yeah.
and then they feel over of a stroke at the age of 65, never really being able to enjoy their life. And
Mm-hmm.
when I think of therapy, I think of long term health.
Mm-hmm.
I think of long term health. I think of it will benefit you not as much as it benefits you today. It's going to benefit you post your work days because
Mm-hmm.
that's what I meet a lot of. I see a lot of older people, especially Latinos, that are in my family that I
Mm-hmm.
know that they don't talk about their issues. The
Mm-hmm.
problem died in the family. They
Right.
never opened it. And these same people are dying of stress,
Right.
causing all kinds of other diseases to come up in their
Mm-hmm.
body because
Yeah.
they're not expressing themselves. They're not getting it off their shoulders. It's
Right.
insane.
And and I don't mean it to sit like for me, it's not to judge people for, and I know that's not what you're doing either, but our intentions is not to judge people on their behaviors because for me, I understand these behaviors as protective factors, right? So our brain naturally, will want to protect us from harm, from pain again, right? So if I learn to be cold and cut off, then nobody could get to me and hurt me, right?
Right.
And so that's also a learned behavior passed down. Don't get too friendly. Don't be too friendly. Don't be talking to all those people, right? Stick with yourself. You don't need nobody. You just need you. But that's not really the truth. We need each other. We're here on this planet all together, So, but I understand that as a means to protect yourself. And in that idea of protecting is causing greater harm. In a lot of cases, it does. And like you mentioned, stress, sometimes we look at the prevalence and we're like, why some people have all these diseases and all these issues? We are in a highly stressed out, constantly highly stressed out environment. Of course, most people have all these issues and medical issues. We are stress is infested in our daily lives and we're not releasing it. We're not expressing it. We're not processing. We're just like you said, stuffing it down, stuffing it down.
I'm gonna jump off our questions only
Mm-hmm.
because something came to mind.
Okay.
Um, right now, especially on the internet, there's this tough guy narrative that's
Mm-hmm.
being pushed, and it's it's being labeled as the pussification of America. Where everybody needs
Wow.
therapy and everybody's soft and oh my God, America's gone. Why? Why? Before people just dealt with their problems, now all of a sudden people are. What have you seen? What would you say to combat that? What would you say to somebody that's their argument? Oh, the
Well,
pussification of America. What are we doing? It's so soft. What happened to real men?
I think society has changed. I think that we're not in the era where we could just suck it up anymore. And it was nice that you said that because I have a perfect example of that when my professor was telling me of how society changes. And she says, when I was growing up, she was an older woman. She was like, when I was growing up, and there were woods everywhere. She's from up north, and she was like, how they protected us from poison ivy and dangerous animals. They taught us about the animals and the creature, the animals in the woods and different plants and things to stay away from. Nowadays, in 2021, our idea of keeping our kids safe is just to close out the woods. Nobody goes, shut it down.
Wow.
And that to me was once again going back to, you know, wanting to protect. Like I was hurt here, so now I don't want that to happen to my child. So the only way I know what to do is to just cut it out completely. Um, I don't think that we are being pussificationed. And I really resent that word because the pussy is very powerful. I'm sorry to any viewers that don't like that word, but it is
Yeah.
the vagina. Let's call it that. I'm also sex therapist. Like the vagina is the most powerful muscle organ on the female's body. Okay. So to label it as less than, I just have issues with that, but it's cool. So for me, I would internalize that like we're getting stronger. And in a sense, we are, because I think that we're coming into this, and I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but a feminist understanding of not just sucking it up, right? Like just we can't just suck it up anymore. Eventually, and we see that out of generations. Look at the generations to pass. I mean, you know, I don't want to speak too personally, but I'm a human being. My parents were tough. My dad was tough. And I think a lot, I'm grateful for him being tough because I, felt like there was no other way but to go to school and do what he wanted me to do. But at the same time, I feel like I didn't get to explore who I was a lot of the times. I didn't get to be free and be open about how I felt, right? And I think that not only me, but a lot of that generation is speaking up, and they're saying that we want to talk, that we want to explore. And just like I'm
Right.
saying in my practice now, I'm getting all these millennials. Like I'm getting so like my caseloads are all young, people that are ready to express their traumas. So I don't think that we're being pussified or pussificationed. I think that we're coming into this understanding that, and just like in the world now, like we know that we can't treat just the physical, the body. We got to treat the physical and the mind because they're attached. It's one and the
Right.
same.
Right.
You can't
It's
treat one without
cohesive.
treating the other. You can't ignore one and not
It's kind
treat
of like
that.
a symbiotic relationship. Right. Absolutely.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
So,
one of the things I wanted to touch on, and again, I'm kind of my mind is fascinated by this topic. Um, there's a crossing of narratives, okay, that's happening, and I've kind of done a lot of thought on it. I actually put a chapter in my book about it, but it's about men walking the fine line between getting help, right? Getting help. They're looking for help. They want the help, but then, and this is I found to be real, not wanting to look less than in
of
the
course.
eyes of the women that they're pursuing.
Yeah.
So what I found was a lot of guys, because here's the thing, women sometimes they talk out of both sides of their mouth. All right, yeah, I'm about to say what I'm about to say.
That's been your experience. I could respect that.
No, no, hear me out first. You tell me if you agree or not. They will say something like, "He doesn't share. I want him to talk to me. I wish that he was more vulnerable, more open." All right, and then
Yes.
in the same breath they say, "I want a man." All right,
Wait, so a man
now
can't be vulnerable?
wait. And that's where I find that there is confusion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I find that there is confusion because as men, we are perceiving it as you talking out of both sides of your mouth. Whether you are or aren't, that's not the debate. It's we perceive it that way. Oh, you're saying I can't be soft. You're saying you want a thug. Like women will make you feel like you need to be Tupac out in these
Mm-hmm.
streets. They will make you feel like you damn near gotta be Tupac. And if you show that other side of you, a lot of times it's not received well. So a lot of the men that I come across, they tighten up. They
Mm.
quote unquote man up, and they don't show that side of themselves. So what I thought about was after thinking on it, and maybe tell me if you agree or not. I come to the
Mm-hmm.
conclusion where women want sensitive, they don't want soft. They want
Yeah.
sensitive, they don't necessarily want soft. They want somebody who is in tune with their emotions and the
Mm-hmm.
emotions of people around them, but isn't caught up in his emotions where he can't function because of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that if men can make that delineation, they can just if they can understand that line, because a lot of guys once they go into their emotions, they sulk, they
Mm-hmm.
become victims, they don't do anything about it. I think that really turns women off. When a woman
Mm-hmm.
or a man can point out what's wrong, he can talk about what's wrong, but then he sits in what's wrong and doesn't address it, or doesn't work on it, like go to therapy, or
Yeah.
doesn't do something about it. You know what I mean? So in my opinion, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, when I talk to guys, I'm like, a woman wants sensitive, she doesn't want soft, and there's a clear difference. And if you can learn that, you will no longer cross those narratives. Now you won't look at me and say, "Oh, women are talking out of both sides of their mouth," because
Mm-hmm.
essentially, if you understand, soft and sensitive are two different things. What are your thoughts?
Right. I know. I think that it would start with first a conversation about what those terms mean to people. Like for me, like what does it mean to have a man? How would I want my man to be with me? And then understanding my partner, like what is your idea of a man? How were you raised to be a man, or your perception on what a man should or should not be? Because I think that there's some women that do want soft or some women that don't, but I think that we both need to know what we want. And I think that is a struggle individually, because even what you're saying is like, okay, so we know the equation, right? Be less soft and be more sensitive, but that's just words. Some people are truly naturally super, super sensitive and empathic, and like that would take it work in itself individually to grasp that, or if you are sensitive, if you are soft, or whatever that means, to come into that and be that, and then find a partner that could match. Because for me, it's like, you do this, you become that, you be less thing, and you read the book and you write down rules and you try to memorize. But is that natural? you
No,
know? I,
no, it's not. It's not. And I think that that's one of those things that you have to kind of like early on in a relationship figure out
Mhm.
where you land, and because you could only fake it for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I can speak for myself.
Hmm.
I have a very serious face, right? When I'm out, people think you're angry, you're mad. They have a very serious face. So a lot of times in my past, women that have found me attractive thought, "Ooh, mean, tough, what?" And then they meet me, and I'm a teddy bear,
I
and it
know.
doesn't
Like,
match
I
up.
don't think you're the sweetest ever.
Yeah, and it doesn't match up, right? So it's like, I think it's one of those things where you have to be who you are. Don't fake it.
Yeah.
If like you said, if you are an empath, if you're one of those people, be that. But we're gonna move on, because I know
Mhm.
we're on a
That
bit of a
was
time
very
thing, and I know
funny.
I wonder. Okay, what do you say to the people who say therapy is too expensive?
It's the same thing. It's kind of like what I touched on before. Show me your bank account and I'll show you what kind of person you are. But I mean, I don't know how that sounds, but to me, it's like you spend money on what you want to spend money on, period. Right. um I do think that when you, like you mentioned, when you are struggling, say for instance someone is struggling with basic necessities, or they have children, and they're a single parent, and they could be busting their butt, but it might be tight. I understand that. um Therapy is a healing service, right? So most therapists like myself provide sliding scale fees, right? I will never turn, I won't say never, let me don't say that. But for the most part, I won't turn down a client that is in severe need. I might even do a free session right then and there, and then direct them to community services, right? Because I still have to pay my bills, But therapy can be expensive. If you're looking to, and I would always recommend going with someone licensed by the state. No, nothing against life coaches, but that is not therapy.
Not therapy.
Um, and so when you are working with a licensed practitioner, most licensed practitioner take insurances, like myself. I take Humana, Medicare, Aetna, and Cigna. So if you have insurance, most insurances have a mental health benefit. You have to call your insurance provider and figure it out and find out what services you have. And if you don't have mental health services, if you have insurances, you may have EAP benefits, employee assistance benefits, which usually they give 3 to 6 sessions. That might be enough. Lastly, so we have the sliding scale. We have a sliding scale, meaning that you might meet a therapist that you can't afford their rate, and they offer you, a lower reduced price, right? That's sliding scale. Then you have some people that do work pro bono. right? Then you have some pro bono, meaning free, yeah. And then you have community mental health agencies where they have grants from the government and you pay nothing, right? So, it's like, it's kind of like if you want to, yeah, go see a doctor. You could go to a specialist that's certified in this and that, and it charges a lot of money because they went to school and they've studied their craft and they deserve that. Or you could also go to mental health, community health, which is same amount of, these, not to classify, these people are educated, licensed, qualified, but they provide services free at charge through the community, and they're getting paid through the government. So, and then lastly, you should have EAP benefits or some type of mental health benefit in your insurance. Call them, figure it out. Find a therapist that takes the insurance. Communicate with them. I would say therapy can be expensive. Therapy is one of those things where it's an additional charge, but I think it's well worth it, especially if you're experiencing stress and trauma. It's worth it, you know? So, and
You
then, like
said
I said,
something.
yes.
You definitely said something about show me your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it right that a lot of the times what people will focus their money on is a substitute for the mental health treatment that they need? For instance, they'll go to alcohol, they'll go into or entertain themselves, they'll dive into food. And a lot of times that's just symbolic of, if you heal what's actually going on, you probably wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
spend that money. You probably would be
Right.
able to save some money because you
Mm-hmm.
deal with the problem at the source instead of putting a band-aid on something that needs stitches. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's
I'm
all
gonna
in
leave.
due
Yeah,
time.
I wanna we did touch on a lot, but I know that there's something that we might have overlooked, something that we might have missed. Is there anything, a point that you want to drive home that you want to bring up that you would like to talk about?
So I did an assessment today with a patient that had severe trauma. I just, sharing. I just lost a friend. I just lost a friend Sunday night to COVID. And see, this was not going to be my question, but I feel like my soul wants to speak on this, and hopefully this could touch someone. And I know we talked a little bit about it before we started, but I was one of those advocates for not trusting the government and putting vaccines in my body, and this wasn't studied long enough. And unfortunately, it had to take me to lose a very, very, very close friend of mine to realize that, you know, um, we gotta get vaccinated. We gotta take care of ourselves. I know that it's scary, and I'm coming from the place of, from being an African American woman, not really trusting the government, looking at all the things that we go through, and having that kind of like, why should I, we were saying, since when the government give free things out, Um, but I have to say that I was being very naive, and I'm learning. This is a learning lesson for me. Um, that this is serious. People are dying. People are losing their lives and families, and I think that a lot of us aren't taking it as serious as we should. And don't let a friend or a family member pass away for you to go get vaccinated or for you to take it seriously. I don't know. I know that's not a question, but
No, 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 no. No, I think, like I was saying earlier, off air, I just spent a week with some of my closest friends who are all physicians, all in the fight, whether it's NYU, Northern New Jersey, in the fight. They see it every day. And the amount of misinformation that's spread, the amount of hearsay, the amount of just misinformation, let's leave it at that, that's put out and perpetuated by the internet is costing people their lives.
yeah.
I've gotten to the point where I try not to debate people anymore. I let them know what I do. I try to inform them as much best as I can. I'm not an
Mhm.
expert, but I leave them at that. And I hope that people are heeding your words and listening and paying attention. This
Right.
is real.
It,
This
it
is
brings
real.
me, yeah, and it brings me back to the whole idea that we talked about of, fear and reacting off of fear and how trauma is passed down, and who would be the best for therapy. We talk about how marginalized communities and people of color, communities of color are losing their lives quicker than anyone else. And I think we're operating from a fear perspective. I don't trust the government. Why would I put this untested thing in my body? The government doesn't like me. And we're actually, that fear is driving us closer to you know to mortality and death and
It's, it's it's such a crazy thing because you understand the fear. I mean, there's documented incidents, Tuskegee. I mean, we can go down the line. There's documented incident where it's been done, syphilis, different things that were injected. That it's documented. This is not hearsay. This is not
right.
conspiracy theories. This is real. So I can see where the hesitation. I can see where the. But you also have people within your own community that are dying. People that
Yeah.
you know, that you see firsthand. I mean, again, we could, this is a topic we can talk about. There's a lot of opinions on both sides. I only hope that people are listening to the science and to
Yeah.
the doctors, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it there. But I want to say thank you so much.
Thank
Mental health is one of those topics that I think it's not talked about enough. Even in an era where it's being talked about more, it's not talked about enough, and it's not talked about enough at a very human level, where we're talking about to your average person. A lot of times when you're listening about mental health, the terms, the just the things that you hear are not catering to just your everyday working mom. That's like, I don't have time for that. Tell me what it is. But don't tell me about the labor. Show me the baby. You know what I mean? You need to
right.
really have those conversations where it's like, no, you can't afford not to have. This is how it's
Right.
directly affecting you in your household as a single mother. This is how it's affecting
Right.
you as a husband. This is how it's affecting you as a black man. This is how it's affecting you as a poor white man. This is how it's affecting
Mhm.
you as a businessman. Like I think the more we do that, the more we narrow it, and the more we talk about it on a human level, where it's really brings it home to people. It makes it
Right.
personal,
Yeah.
and now you're saying to
Mhm.
you, "Oh, okay, so I'm not crazy. Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
this is no, okay, yeah. Nobody can live the life. I learned that the hard way. I learned it the hard way. Nobody can live the life that I live without getting help alone.
Yeah.
You cannot do it because it's an unnatural state. It's an
Hmm.
unnatural state, so you cannot live in your natural life just dealing with it. It doesn't happen, you
Right.
know. And
Yeah.
I definitely benefited from therapy.
Yeah.
I look forward to maybe in the future going back because there's
Mhm.
that I realize I still have to deal with. But I really want to say thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
very much for your time. I know how busy you are, and I know you have a lot going on. And my sincerest
Mhm.
condolences on your loss. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been 5 questions with Rocky Dimes and Dr. Raphael. Dr. Raphael, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. And with that, we